In the preceding podcast, we explored how we perceive the world and how our thinking is preconditioned in a specific way. All of it is happening unconsciously and unknowingly. These processes are universal to all individuals and continue throughout our lifetime if not updated. Another interesting observation is how our mind treats both inanimate objects and human beings similarly. The same cognitive pattern apply to both. This means our unconscious thinking patterns regarding our sons, daughters, and other relatives and human beings are similar to how we fulfill our materialistic goals. At some level, we know we are humans, but our inner mechanism does not distinguish between humans and things, but processes all requests similarly. Today, we are going to explore another inherent pattern that is also built within us and shapes our lives. The topic for today's podcast is we treat each other as property. When we purchase items such as mobiles, cars, and even small things like pen or clothes, we often assert ownership, claiming that is mine. We claim ownership over things we have purchased, designed, or created. This sense of ownership extends to work of art, writing, and creations by individuals like potters, artists, and writers. Even children display a clear understanding of what belongs to them, such as pencils, erasers, clothes, etc. But does human thinking differ when it comes to another human being? Before we proceed, consider this question. Can anything with an owner truly experience freedom? When any animal complies with your demands, is it operating out of freedom? Now, let's apply this concept to human and explore it further. Let's start by understanding the term property. Property refers to the things that belongs to someone or has ownership over it. Going back to the potter's analogy, the artifact they create are considered their property and they hold ownership right over them. When these artifacts are sold, the ownership rights may change through exchange for a prize or a gift, but the notion of ownership remains. Here are some sentences about how we communicate with others. That is my painting. This is my smartphone. That is my car. This is my laptop. That is my school. All the sentences indicate ownership and that the item belongs to someone. The fifth statement, that is my school, signifies one's memories are connected to that building, which is not the same as the other sentences. A student may have memories associated with the school building, but not ownership claim over it. In everything we create or purchase, there exists an owner. A painter signs their name on the painting to claim ownership. When you personalize a smartphone with your credentials such as name, fingerprints, and other details, it becomes yours. Similarly, keys grant access to lockers, cars, apartments, etc., establishing ownership. Even domesticated animals understand and comply with this concept. Does this ownership principle solely applies to inanimate objects and animals, or does it extend to humans? Let's examine how human beings relate to one another. Applying the same structure used earlier for things, consider the sentences. This is my son. That is my daughter. This is my mother. That is my father. That is my aunt, uncle, grandpa, etc. He is my husband. She is my wife. When we compare the way we communicate about things and humans, there is a striking similarity in our expression. Our brain does not distinguish between things and humans, applying the same fundamental approach to both. This may be due to language limitation, suggesting that humans are perceived similarly to any other object around us. In the previous podcast, we explored similar concept applied to both things and humans, revealing our comparable ways of relating and functioning. All the statements indicate a relationship between two individuals. Let's examine the first two statements. This is my son. That is my daughter. Both statements imply a ownership right over the other person. Let me explain to you. An artist who creates an artwork becomes its owner. Likewise, a potter who creates a pot is considered the owner. However, the reverse is not true. A laptop, car, or apartment cannot own you. A creator can create their creation. Thus, they become the owner. But the reverse is impossible. Similarly, parents create a child and therefore possesses ownership, whereas the child cannot own the parents. The reverse is not possible. Much like the way we claim ownership over objects or possessions, there exists an unconscious tendency to lay claim to certain relationship. Since our birth, there is an unseen bond with our parents, and that connection remains for the rest of our lives. This gives rise to certain unconscious beliefs that continues to operate as an undercurrent, dominating our thinking and actions in the future. The third and the fourth statement communicates a different message. This is my mother. That is my father. For example, this is my son and this is my mother may appear linguistically similar, but their deeper meaning differs significantly. It's akin to a potter owning the pot, while the reverse is impossible. The mother, as a creator, holds ownership over her son. The parents have authority and ownership over their children. The children can belong to their parents but can't own them. The creations cannot have the ownership title over their creators. Uncles, aunts, and grandparents cannot own a child. In the absence of parents, they can be caretakers or foster parents. They can also adopt the child and play the role of creators. What happens when we extend this concept to couples? The husband says, "This is my wife." The wife says, "That is my husband." Who owns whom? They haven't created each other, and nor are they commodities to be exchanged. The relationship between a couple is a mutual agreement, but our unconscious thinking, beliefs, communication, and actions seems similar to how we treat objects. For a detailed understanding of the functioning of our internal mechanism in decision making, refer to my book, The Self Decoded. None of us consciously believe that we are somebody else's property, but our behaviors, beliefs, and communication reveals that our internal programming follows the same tendencies. Throughout our lives, our unconscious conditioning controls us, which implies it restricts our freedom. Understanding these internal mechanisms is crucial to neutralize their impact and updating our system. With inanimate objects and items, we expect them to satisfy us, making their compliance mandatory. If they fail to meet our expectations, we repair, replace, or discard them. However, we cannot treat a human child in the same manner, but each time, the parent's disapproval leads the child to experience fear, resulting in compliance that may continue into adulthood. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have an ownership of our children. The purpose of this podcast is to help you understand the concept that continues to shape our lives even in adulthood. This mindset operates as an undercurrent, influencing our beliefs, behaviors, and communication. A case study makes it easier to comprehend how this concept grips us and affects our thinking and actions. In the previous podcast, we discussed Amit's case, where he was on the brink of suicide, which I called a premature exit. Consciously and unconsciously, Amit recognizes himself as his parents' goal, their creation, though he may not be fully aware of being created to uplift them from poverty. This message is directly and indirectly embedded into his system, and his parents constantly remind him of his purpose as he grows up. Amit feels an unconscious compulsion to fulfill his mother's wishes. He perceives himself as a property with ownership rights belonging to them. leading him to comply with her demands. His debts and the pressure to marry a girl of his mother's choice created a dilemma, and he feels like a sacrificial lamb with no say in the matter. Emotionally torn, Amit contemplates a premature exit, even then believing that his mother should benefit financially. This reveals the height of indebtedness he has been living. Amit's emotions are overwhelming, and this complex problem surpasses his comprehension of being objective. If you have listened to the previous podcast, you would recognize that the purpose is inherent in all our goals and desires, and Amit's situation is no exception. The same rule applies here. Amit fears disapproval from his parents, particularly his mother, as it signifies breaking ties with his creators, which is painful. Unconsciously, he seeks acceptance and a sense of worthiness by meeting their expectations, even to the extent of sacrificing himself. His loyalty and commitment lies with them, leading him to plan his death to ensure financial benefits to his parents. The notion of property is evident from both sides. The mother believes she has full rights over Amit, placing demands knowing he will comply. If not, she may guilt trip him, using statements like, "I gave birth to you and raised you with so much hardship." Unconsciously, Amit's system behaves in a way that complies with her needs despite being in debt. This entire process occurs at an unconscious level beyond Amit's awareness. It is critical for us to understand how our thinking process functions when it comes to relationship. The closer the relationship, the stronger its strings and tighter its grip. Amit's mother wants him to fly with her goals and dreams on his mind and his shoulders, which is an elusive freedom. It is similar to a bird allowed to fly, with one leg tied with a string held by the mother bird. This unseen string leads to stress and pressure to comply with others. One must be willing to investigate to sort out the issue. But it's not so easy when we are entangled in the relationship game. You are a player, clouded by your emotions, playing the game. It is simply impossible to view the situation objectively. Even a mighty elephant obeys when his hind leg is chained to a peg in the earth. So you can understand the impact of our creators and its undercurrent having a grip on us. They influence our minds and we behave as property. That dynamic continues unconsciously into our adulthood. It triggers our thinking, beliefs, and actions to function in a pre-programmed way that deprives us of being objective and neutral for a specific outcome. This preconditioned limitations placed within us constricts our free flow of thoughts. If this is true, can we truly experience freedom, or are we living in an illusionary freedom? Nature conditions us from birth with its various mechanisms that influences our functioning, and most often it is challenging to understand this mechanism having their grip over us. But with commitment and devotion, you can learn to undo its impact and start living life with freedom. We unconsciously behave as if we are somebody else's property, and we treat others in the same manner. This unique human survival pattern has been discussed in detail in my book, The Self Decoded. Under the name of relationship, we also feel obliged to validate that connection dutifully. The undercurrent of fulfilling the commitment is an emotional hangover that could make us feel guilty, ashamed, or sad. To avoid it, our internal survival mechanism compels us to fulfill those obligations. It is a web of psychological transaction that occurs within us to move from negative to positive emotion. This loop continues throughout our adult life. As we wrap up this podcast, please take a moment to reflect on whether you have been living your life as someone else's property, merely fulfilling their goals and dreams. It's also worth considering whether you may be treating others in your life as your own possession and controlling their life. Going back to our core inquiry, if someone owns you and also governs your life, can you really have freedom? Or is it temporary freedom so that we continue to survive? To listen to more podcasts and to watch YouTube videos, please feel free to visit my website at www.livingwithfreedom.com. I also have 2 books available for purchase on various platforms: Stop Surviving, Start Living with Freedom, and The Self-Decoded. The better you know who you are and the working of your internal mechanism, the more likely you will experience joy and peace. In the upcoming podcast, you will have an opportunity to learn something new and unique. In the meantime, I encourage you to look for opportunities to express gratitude for everything around you. See you next week.